Hello folks, this is a quick video for you that's going to go through some practice problems for surface area and volume of pyramids, cones, and spheres. Okay, so I'm actually going to do one live for you here. It's definitely the most complicated one because it's a pentagonal pyramid. Okay. And then I've got two others for you that I'll give you the formulas for and help you kind of start them. And then I want you to try those on your own. And then I'll have you check back with the video to see how you did. All right. So let's go ahead and jump right into it here. Okay. So this is a pyramid. Okay. So for surface area, okay, if we go back up to the formula up here. So the surface area of a pyramid is the area of the base shape plus 1/2 the perimeter times the slant height. Okay, so that's what I'm going to write for myself here. So surface area is the area of the base shape plus 1/2 times the perimeter of the base shape times the slant height. Okay, and then the volume of a pyramid is 1/3 the area of the base shape times the height of the pyramid. All right. So if we can figure out a lot of this stuff for surface area, as you can see, we'll be able to repeat it for volume. Okay. So let's use the information that we have here in the picture to help us out. Okay. So they tell us that the height of the pyramid is 11. Okay. That's very helpful. They tell us that each side length of the base shape is 12. Okay, so that's going to help us find the perimeter. So let's go ahead and do that. So the perimeter here would be 12 times 5, because this is a pentagonal pyramid. Okay, and as you can see with the little congruence markers, these guys right here, that all of those sides are the same length. Okay, so the perimeter here is 60. Okay, and then the other thing that they tell us here is that the apothem, which it's been a hot minute since you've heard me use that term, okay, but the apothem here, which is like the height of the individual little triangles that make up the base shape, right? So that apothem is 8.3. So remember, that's like the height of your triangle, right? And then remember, the base of that triangle is 12 because each of these side lengths is 12. So what I'm going to do to find the area of my base shape, okay, remember, it's the number of sides times the area of one of those triangles, okay? So the area of one of those triangles is, remember, 1/2 base of the triangle times the height of the triangle. Okay, so the base of the triangle is 12. And the height of those triangles, and I'm not talking about the triangles that make up the faces. It's not the like really tall triangles. It's the triangles, like the invisible triangles that make up the base shape, that make up the pentagon. Okay, so the height of those triangles is 8.3. Okay, so in my calculator, what I'm going to do is okay, 1/2 of 12 is 6. So 6 times 8.3. I'm going to plug that into a calculator because honestly, I don't really want to do it in my head. Okay, and I get 49.8. Okay, so that means my base shape, I'm going to switch back here. So my base shape is the number of sides, which is 5, times the area of one of those triangles, 49.8. Okay, and I get that when I multiply that out is 249. Okay, right. Now the very last thing I need is my slant height. Okay, so I have two of the things I need. I have my perimeter and I have the area of my base shape, but I do need my slant height. Now for my slant height, I need to use this triangle right here, because my slant height is this right here. Okay, which it's not very well drawn by me, but you can kind of get the picture, right? So here, right, I have A, B, and C. So I need to use my Pythagorean theorem, okay? So in order to find my slant height, I need to do A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So my A is 8.3. My B is how tall the actual pyramid is, which is 11. Okay, and that equals my slant height squared. So 8.3 squared is 68.89. Okay, plus 11 squared is 121. And that equals my slant height squared. So I'm going to add those together, and I get that my slant height squared is 189.89. And then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I get that my slant height is 70, nope, not 70, oh my goodness, is 13.78. Okay, so now I have everything that I need in order to solve this. Okay, I have my perimeter of my base shape, I have the area of my base shape, and I have my slant height. So let's plug those into the surface area formula. Okay, so my surface area is the area of the base shape, which is 249, plus 1/2 times the perimeter is 60, times my slant height is 13.78. Okay, so half of 60 is 30, and 30 times 13.78 is 413.4. So I'm going to add that to 249. So I get that my final surface area is 662.4, and then my unit would be yards squared. Okay, so this right here is my final answer. Now, I will say this was definitely like a more complicated problem than I normally would give you, right? In most of the problems you're going to see on like quizzes and tests and stuff that I give you, the base shape will have a formula that's not, it won't be like a regular pentagon or a regular hexagon. More likely than not, it would be like a triangle or a square or a rectangle. And in most of the problems, I'm going to give you, like I said, on like quizzes and tests, I'll give you the slant height and you won't necessarily have to solve for it. But I did want to show you a couple of different like ways basically that that problems could present themselves to you that are a little bit more complex, and how you could solve for the things that you need with the geometry tools that you already know, right? Like having to go back and use the formula that we have for finding the area of a regular polygon, or using the Pythagorean theorem in order to find a missing part of a right triangle, things like that. Okay. All right, but let's go ahead and jump over to volume now. So we're going to find the volume of this same pyramid. Now this is going to be a lot easier because we've done a lot of the hard work already, right? So I know from doing my surface area that the area of the base shape is 249. I don't have to solve that again. And I also know that the height is 11. Okay, so my volume then is 1/3. That looks crazy. Did not even look like a 3. Okay, so 1/3 times 249 times 11. Now you can do this in lots of different orders. You could do 249 divided by 3 and then times 11. You could multiply 249 and 11 together and then divide by 3, which that's what I'm going to do just because that's kind of what I feel like doing for this problem. So 249 times 11, I still have my 1/3 here. 249 times 11 is 2,739. Okay, and then the last thing I need to do is take this large number and divide it by 3. That's what that 1/3 means out in front. So when I do that, I get 913, and then I need my units. So it would be yards again, but it would be yards cubed this time, right? Because I'm dealing with a volume, all right? So there is an example, a practice problem for you that deals with a pyramid with a regular polygon as its base. Okay, there's 2 more practice problems here that'll be a little bit shorter, a little bit simpler, because it's just a simple sphere and a cone. Okay, so I'm going to set you up with these formulas for both of these, and then I want you to try this out on your own. So for this cone, I have 30 is my slant height. Okay, and 13 is my radius. Okay, now I want you to keep in mind that you do not know the height of this cone, which you will need. Right, you are going to need that in order to find the volume, okay, of this cone. So, but remember, this slant height here is 30, and you have a right triangle, so you may end up needing, or not may, you will end up needing the Pythagorean Theorem, okay? So just to give you a little hint, a little bit of help here, this would be like A in your Pythagorean Theorem, this would be B, and this would be C, okay? When you go through and solve this, your height should be less than 30. Okay, so if you get a number that's bigger than 30, you've done something wrong in your math somewhere, okay? Because remember, you end up solving for B, okay? So in terms of formulas, okay, remember your surface area formula is pi r squared plus pi r L, okay? And then your volume formula is 1/3 pi r squared h. Okay. All right, and then for my sphere, okay, so I'm going to scroll down a little bit. So for my sphere, they only give me 1 dimension. They tell me that the diameter is 15.6. Keep in mind that you need the radius for both of these. So remember, the radius is the diameter cut in half, okay? Your surface area formula is 4 pi r squared, okay? And your volume formula is 4/3 pi r cubed, right? So what I would love for you to do, okay, is try out, you can do this in a couple of stages if you want to. So you can try the cone problem and then come back and check your answer, or you can try all 4, right, and watch straight through when I have all of this worked out for you. So whichever way you're going to do this, either trying and checking the cone problems, then pausing the video again, and then trying and checking the surface area or the sphere problems, okay? Or if you're going to try all of them at once and then check your answers straight through, go ahead right now, pause the video, try out as many as you would like to try out at this time, and then check back with me to see how you did. All right, folks, so I'm going to go over the cone problems here. So go ahead and check your answers against mine. So for surface area, you didn't actually have to do very much because I gave you the slant height and the radius. You had everything you needed for the formula. So you just had to plug that information directly into the formula. So remember, my radius was 13 and my slant height was 30. So my surface area is pi times 13 squared plus pi times 13 times 30. 13 squared is 169, and then 13 times 30 is 390. So I end up with 169 pi plus 390 pi. You can add those together and you get 559 pi. And then once you get to that point, you have to plug that into your calculator. So 559 times, hit the pi symbol, and then click equals. And when I did that, I got 1,756.15. Now, if you did not give units in your answer, that's totally fine. I went ahead and put units squared, just in case anybody decided to put units for this one. If I don't give you units in the problem, you don't have to give me units in the answer. Like, I'm not going to require you to give me units in the answer, okay? Now, volume was a little bit trickier because I didn't know the height of the cone. But remember, the slant height is like the hypotenuse of that little right triangle that you can see inside the cone. The radius is like A, right, one of the legs of the right triangle, and you're looking for the height, which is B, right, which is what you see here. So I set up the Pythagorean theorem. So I have 13 squared, so A squared plus B squared. I don't know what the height is, so H squared equals 30 squared, which was my C, so C squared, right? So if you go through and follow the work that I did, 13 squared is 169, 30 squared is 900. Now, because in previous problems you've seen me do with Pythagorean theorem, especially in this unit, when dealing with cones and with pyramids, you've seen me solving for the slant height in a lot of these, okay? But in this one, I'm actually solving for the regular height. I'm not looking for the hypotenuse, I'm looking for one of the legs. So I need to subtract 900 and 169 in order to get that height by itself. Okay, so if you added them, right, that would be like if I was looking for the slant height, if the variable was on the right side of the equal sign. Okay, so that's a common mistake that people make when they're doing these, just because they're so used to solving for that hypotenuse in the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so I subtracted 900 and 169 and got 731 equals the squared height. So I need to take the square root of both sides, and I got that the height was 27.04. Okay. Now, from this point on, if you rounded a little bit differently than me, like I kept the really long decimal for the height in my calculator in order to do the rest of my volume calculations. So if you rounded at 27.04 and used that number, or you rounded, say, to 27, right? If you rounded a little bit differently than me or at a different point in the problem than I did, then you're going to get a slightly different answer than I did and slightly different numbers as you go through the rest of the part of this that deals with the actual volume formula. But remember, the process is what's important, not necessarily if the numbers are exactly the same as mine. Because more often than not, they're off just due to rounding, right? Which doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, okay? So I'm using my volume formula, which is 1/3 pi r squared h, okay? So now I have all the information I need. So my volume equals 1/3 pi 13 squared, and then my height, which I just solved for using the Pythagorean theorem, is 27.04, okay? So I went ahead and followed my order of operations. So I did 13 squared first and got 169. Then what I did next is I did 169 times 27.04. You could have done this in a slightly different order than I did. You could have done 169 divided by 3 and then multiplied by the 27.04. You could have done 27.04 divided by 3 first and then multiplied by 169, right? Since you're just multiplying and dividing, it doesn't, and like everything is multiplication and division, it doesn't necessarily matter what order you did this in. Typically though, I will do all of the multiplication first and then all of the division, just so that I can kind of keep it straight in my head. Okay, so I did 169 times 27.04 first and got 4,569.25. Again, your number may be a little different than mine. If you rounded differently than me, that's okay. After that, just like in all of the problems that I've done up to this point that deal with a pi, I'm going to leave pi off and deal with it at the end. So I did next 4,569.25 divided by 3 and got 1,523.08, and I still have my pi on there. So I multiplied that that larger number, the 1,523.08, times pi, using the pi symbol in my calculator. So my final answer was 4,784.91, and then my units there, if I had units, would be units cubed because this is a volume, right? So again, if your answer is a little bit off from mine, it's most likely due to rounding, but you can go back and check your math if you need to. If it's really far off from this number, then you may want to go back and check your answer, okay? So if you tried all of the problems, just go ahead and keep watching, and I'm going to do the spheres problems for you next. But if you just stopped and just wanted to try the cone problems and check them, and then you want to go on and do the sphere problems, go ahead and pause the video right now, work the sphere problems out for yourself, keeping in mind, okay, that the formulas for the spheres, for the surface area is 4 pi r squared, and the formula for volume is 4/3 pi r cubed. Okay, those are your formulas. Go ahead and try those sphere problems. Pause the video, try those out, and then check back with me to see how you did. All right, folks, so go ahead and check your answers against mine for the surface area and volume of this sphere. So I gave you the diameter rather than giving you the radius here. So the first thing you have to do is take the diameter, cut it in half, and that'll give you the radius, right? So 15.6 divided by 2 is 7.8. So that's the number that I have to use for radius in both surface area and volume. Once you have that information, it's just a plug and chug. Plug the radius into both formulas, and follow your order of operation. So for surface area, you have 4 pi times 7.8 squared. 7.8 squared is 60.84. 60.84 times 4 is 243.36. And then you still have that pi stuck on the end, so 243.36 times pi is 764.54, and then my units there is inches squared, because this is an area. Even though we're dealing with a 3D shape, this is still a surface area, okay? Then for volume, the formula is slightly more complicated just because it has that fraction there at the front. So I have my volume equals 4/3 pi times 7.8 cubed. 7.8 cubed is 474.552. Then what I typically do next is I do times 4 and then divided by 3, just so that way, again, I can kind of keep all my multiplication and division straight. So 474.552 times 4 is 1,898.208. I still have that pi on there, and I still have to divide by 3 because I haven't done that divided by 3 yet. So when I divide that larger number, the 1,898.208 by 3, I get 632.736, and then I still have that pi on there. So I'm multiplying that number by pi, and I get 1,987.80 if you round, and then my units would be inches cubed here because this is a volume. Now, if you rounded slightly differently than I did, especially for the volume problem, your numbers may be a little bit different than mine, but they shouldn't be so different to the point where you're like, wait, that number seems wrong, okay? But if your number is slightly different than mine at various steps just because of rounding, don't worry about that. Remember, the rounding and the exact decimal is not as important as making sure that you're plugging the information into the right spot, right? Following your order of operations correctly and doing the process correctly. Remember, process is more important, especially with these problems, because of all the possible rounding errors than your final result. All right, y'all, so I hope this video was helpful for you in seeing a couple more examples with surface area and volume of pyramids, cones, and spheres. So I will see you in the next video, folks. Bye, everybody.